All right, Miss Brent, begin.
Audiences first got to know Audrey Hepburn when she played a dancer in the 1952 film Secret People. But most audiences did not know Hepburn had a painful secret of her own.
Her mother had been a Nazi sympathizer. Her father, Joseph Rustin, was a Nazi agent. It created a problem that Audrey would have, this burden that Audrey would lug with her the rest of her life.
Audrey Hepburn's family lived in the Netherlands, and to make up for the sins of her parents, she did everything she could during World War II to help the resistance, including dancing to raise money to feed and clothe Jews in hiding.
There are any number of times when she almost died. Somebody, probably a German soldier, shoved her under a tank as the bullets stitched past. And then she lived through the hunger winter, so it's a miracle in a way when you add it all up.
Later in life, the indignities Hepburn experienced during the war turned her into a tireless humanitarian, traveling the world as a special ambassador for the United Nations Children's Relief Organization known as UNICEF.
UNICEF thought they were going to get this pretty face, and what they got was a soldier who insisted on going into war zones, civil wars, the dangerous conditions on all of these missions. And she insisted on going in there because there were children who were like her, who were victims of wars started by adults.
Now, a new biography reveals the wartime experiences that made Audrey Hepburn's life more difficult and yet more meaningful.
And that's why nobody had written a book about it, because she wouldn't talk about it. And because while she was alive, certainly no one dared talk about the fact that her parents were Nazis. And so when I stumbled upon this topic, I was working on a book on Jimmy Stewart in the 8th Air Force, and I stumbled upon the fact that Audrey was in Arnhem in the Netherlands through the war. Well, that's pretty interesting. But nobody had written a book about that. Now why? It was because she wouldn't talk about it.
Which is sort of astounding. I mean, I guess it's understandable since she wouldn't talk about it, but you had mentioned somewhere along the line that there's something like 1,000 titles of material. If you go and look up Audrey Hepburn on Google, it would seem like there's nothing left to say or to write about, but you certainly found something.
I did, and I can't believe it was me.
How in the world did you find all this out?
Really, it was the children. It was the people about her age who were left in Arnhem enveloped that I could talk to. And I sat down with them, and they really opened my eyes to, how brutal it was there. And so I had those things. I spent a lot of time in the Netherlands on the ground doing this research. And then I got hooked up with Audrey's son, Luca. And he filled in blanks for me. I filled in blanks for him. We formed this sort of partnership, and we're kind of like brothers now. And it's really, that part's very cool.
She clearly didn't talk about it publicly, but was it something she even talked about privately with him?
Yeah, she talked to both sons about the war quite a bit. Lessons you can learn, my son, and it's really all about the war. And he said, he made a big point of that she wouldn't tell stories about Hollywood when she wanted to make a point about doing the right thing and, growing up the right way. She talked about the war.
It did have some positive influence on her life, or at least it influenced her to make positive changes in other people's lives through her work through UNICEF. It's all of a piece, right? It's all tied together.
Absolutely. So the war ends, and it's the UNRRA, which is the precursor to UNICEF, brings food in and clothing and whatever. And Audrey sees that and benefits from it, and she pays it forward. It took her a long time. Once she was through with her career, it was always with her. There are little UNICEF things that she did, I think, going back to, years before her official involvement.
Do you ever ask yourself what she would think about the fact that now that she's gone, that this story is coming out?
That was asked of Luca and me sitting in Velp at the book launch there, and I gave an answer that was just me talking. But then Luca said she would say it was okay because this was the right way to tell it. It wasn't sensational. It was like this is the time. He honestly felt, I mean, he feels the spirit of his mother pretty closely, and he felt that she would think it was for the good, that the world needs to hear this now.
Well, and thanks to you, the world is. Robert Matzen, thanks very much.
Thank you, Paul.